My girlfriend and I got into a fight regarding the topic of rope and she is threatening to leave me. Couple of days ago, my girlfriend was reading some feminist article. The article said, any man that has intimacy with a woman who has been drinking should be charged with rope. My girlfriend asked me what I thought of that and I said I don't think it's that simple and you can't just automatically say that any man who has intimacy with a woman who has been drinking is a rapist. That's absolutely ridiculous. There are too many variables to consider to make such a broad statement. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, her whole demeanor changed, and her response was dripping in condescension. Really, what other information would you need? It seems pretty clear to me. I told her that if she considered that to be clear, I'm a little worried about her sense of free thinking. For instance, the most obvious question, what if they're both intoxicated? How much does she need to have had before he becomes a rapist? What about if the situation was reversed and it was the man that had been drinking? Would that make her a rapist? What if she was the one to initiate the intimacy? These are all relevant questions to be answered. This is info I would expect to know before just saying a man is a rapist if he sleeps with an intoxicated woman. At that point my girlfriend became visibly angry. Her response was, if the woman has been drinking and she is even a buzz, the man is a rapist. If they're both drinking, the man is still a rapist. If she initiated the intimacy, the man is still a rapist. Then in the reverse situation the woman is the rapist? I asked. She laughed with a condescension that made my blood boil and she said, don't be stupid. The only way a woman could rope a man is if she had a gun or something and put something up his back door. If he gets a stiffy, it's not rope. I was and still am floored by her hypocrisy and ignorance. Needless to say, this argument escalated. Further than it should have, to the point that we were actually yelling at each other. Finally, I had to just walk away. I went for a walk and when I got back, she was sitting on the couch. Without even looking at me, she said if I don't change my way of thinking immediately, she's moving out. To which I responded, I would offer to help you pack, but you don't need a man's help with that. And I went to bed. We didn't speak to each other for 2 days and had been walking around the house, ignoring each other. But yesterday morning she said to me, you know, you were a rapist because we had intimacy the night of my best friend's wedding. We were both hammered at the wedding, we went back to our hotel room, and she initiated some of the wildest intimacy we ever had. But that last statement was the last straw for me. I told her I would not ask her to change what she thinks the way she demanded I do, but if she really felt I did that to her, then we are done, and she needs to move out. Then today, she went to work. She sent me an email that says, I would never call the police on you because I know you never intended to rope me and I completely forgive you. I'd even be willing to forget everything that has happened. All I ask is that you simply acknowledge that you did that to me and that men who have intimacy with intoxicated women are rapists. That's all I'm asking. I did not, nor will I respond to that. Later on, I received another email from my girlfriend. In it she said, after talking to my mom and my sister, they both told me I should be ashamed of myself for even thinking that you had did that to me. And I've given it some thought, and I no longer think that. I'm sorry for saying that. I know you would never do that to me. I gave some thought to it and this time I did respond. I said, thank you for the apology. And your apology is accepted. Unfortunately, I still can't continue in the relationship. I'm relieved that you no longer feel that way, but it was because your mom and sister told you it was wrong. That doesn't take away from the fact you did believe it, and if they had not said what they said or even if they agreed with you, you would still feel that way, and that is something I cannot rectify in my heart. I feel as though you are a stranger to me and not a stranger I have any desire to get to know. Sometimes what you say cannot be fixed with I'm sorry. This is one of those times. I wish nothing but the best for you and I hope you find someone that will make you happy. I can't be that person. She has not responded. My ex-girlfriend was calling me constantly over the next week. It was bordering on harassment. She would apologize over and over and say that she loved me and no longer felt like I decided to rope her and she just wanted to be with me again. I told her no repeatedly. At one point I told my 20-year daughter, not from the ex, everything about the breakup and what she said about me roping her at the wedding. My daughter and I have a super close bond and tell each other everything. So, after telling my daughter all about it, she became so angry that she called my ex. She offered to arrange my ex's face for cheaper than a plastic surgeon would and also to remove any teeth to prevent any toothaches she may get in the future. So my kid and I were sitting on my couch having a couple beers and chatting when the cops knocked on my door. The ex called them and reported my daughter for threatening her. They charged her with a misdemeanor for the threats but they didn't arrest her or put her in jail. Needless to say she wanted to make a visit to my ex after that, but I was able to talk a little sense into her. Later that same night I got another call from my ex with more of the crying and the I'm sorries, and she wanted to just forget everything that has happened and she no longer feels like I did rope her and she just wanted us to be together again. She asked if she could come over to talk and she alluded to us having intimacy, I guess thinking I am just a dumb man and the offer of intimacy would have me forget that she accused me of rope and tried to have my daughter arrested. I told the ex that I was not interested in talking nor was I ever going to be sticking my pee in crazy again. I asked her to please stop calling me and just let me live my life in peace. I hoped that would be the end of it, but as we all know, hope springs eternal but was not to be my luck. At about 3 a.m. I awoke to something that normally I quite enjoyed waking up to, but this night I was not pleased. She had broken into my flat, and knowing that I always sleep unclothed, she came into my room and was giving me neck. Like I said, normally that would have been awesome, but this time I was infuriated. I started screaming at her to get the F out of my house before I called the cops on her like she did my daughter. She started crying and begging me to please talk to her. I'm ashamed to say, I did grab her by the arm and walk her out of my room to the front door only to find some friend of hers sitting on my couch. I guess her car was not running so she got a ride from this friend. So now I'm standing in my living room, unclothed, yelling for them to get the F out of my house. Which woke up my daughter, who was sleeping in the spare room because she had too much booze and I didn't want her driving. My daughter came out of the room with a baseball bat because she didn't know who I was yelling at and she thought we were getting robbed. When she saw who I was yelling at, she actually tried going after the ex and her friend, but I was able to stop her and get her to go into the bedroom. I ordered my ex to get the F out and told her I better never hear from her again. Next morning I have off from work, so my daughter and I are eating breakfast and talking about going to get new locks for my house later when I get a knock at my door. My daughter answered it and lo and behold it was two detectives. My ex apparently was now trying to have me arrested for roping her. I couldn't believe it. Well, I guess I could believe it, but it was still a shock nonetheless. They said that she had called and told them she wanted to report me, that I decided to rope her, and that it was regarding an incident in a hotel room after attending a wedding and they were there to ask me some questions. Now believe me when I tell you that I'm not a man that just readily cries in front of people. Much less total strangers. But for some reason that I couldn't explain, I just started crying. I wasn't bawling like a little girl or anything, but there were for sure tears in my eyes, and I was unable to hold them back. Being about as embarrassed and ashamed as a man can be, I excused myself to the bathroom. I pulled myself together and washed my face. I gave myself a stern talking to about crying like a wuss in front of total strangers. And I started heading back out to the living room. I got as far as the hallway when I heard my daughter, half yelling, obviously crying herself, telling the detectives basically what a beach my ex is and that I didn't rope her, that we were just intoxicated and had intimacy and it was my ex that initiated it in the first place. I walked back into the living room, tears and blubbering behind me, and told my kid that I would handle my business from here and to please excuse herself to the bedroom. Once she had left the room, the female detective asked me if that was really what had happened and I told her it was. They thanked me for my time and they left. A few hours later my phone rings and it is the same female detective. She told me that they went to my ex's and asked her to go further into detail about what happened. They asked her were we both drinking, and she admitted that we were. They asked her if I used force to get my way, and surprisingly she told them no, that she was in fact the one who initiated the intimacy. The detective then asked her if she was the one that initiated it, then how exactly was it that she was feeling like I was the one to rope her. She said that she was intoxicated and a woman cannot give permission to intimacy while she is intoxicated, so if a man has intimacy with her then that is rope. The detective said she had to keep herself from laughing out loud. She then told my ex that she didn't know where she was getting her info from, but she explained that it is illegal for somebody to have intimacy with another person if that person is so intoxicated that they are unconscious. She said that what happened between her and I was nothing more than two people having intoxicated sex. The detective said since she was the one initiating, the only person who could be roped the other was my ex and not me. Then the detective said my ex got huffy and asked her how could she possibly have been the one committing rope since not only was I the man, but I had a stiffy. The detective told her that she wasn't sure where my ex was getting her information from, but that she was wrong in everything that she was saying and that she should be a little more careful about making police reports and spouting off what essentially equates to nonsense because she could have done some serious damage to somebody else's life under the right circumstances. I cannot tell you how wonderful it was to hear all that stuff that this detective was telling me. I really wish I could have been there to see my ex's face when she was informed of all this, although I know that is just childish and petty on my part. Then the detective said something else that I was not expecting. She told me that my daughter had told her about the night before when I woke up to the ex giving me neck. She asked me if it was true and I said yes. The detective told me that if I wanted to, I could report that as ASA and she would be arrested. They would probably just release her on her own recognizance, but she would still have to go to court and if found guilty she would have to register as an offender. I couldn't believe it. I really thought about it, but I have no desire to ruin my ex's life. I just want her out of mine. But you can bet I had fun telling my ex what the detective told me and I used it to tell my ex if she ever contacts me again that I would do it. And also, she needed to have the charges on my kid dropped. But if she did that, had the charges dropped and then never contacted me again, I would not report her. She agreed. And I can't be happier.